In the vast continent of Africa, millions of people are facing a dire hunger crisis, with various factors exacerbating the situation. Conflicts and instability disrupt food production and distribution, leaving vulnerable populations without access to nutritious meals. Climate change brings erratic weather patterns, leading to droughts and crop failures, further deepening the crisis. Economic challenges, limited infrastructure, and inadequate agricultural practices also contribute to the widespread hunger across the continent. Today on One Slot, we shine a spotlight on this pressing issue as we explore the causes, consequences, and the potential solutions to combat food insecurity and malnutrition in Africa. Stay tuned for more of this conversation on One Slot. Thanks for staying with us in One Slot. I am Rita Omodia. Now, the United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, recently made a distressing announcement regarding the dire situation in West Africa. This region is currently experiencing its most severe hunger crisis in the past 10 years, leaving millions of people without access to essential aid. Due to limited funding, the WFP is struggling to provide assistance to those in need. According to a statement released by the agency, nearly half of the 11.6 million individuals who were targeted to receive food aid during the lean season from June to August are not receiving any form of assistance. This staggering statistics highlights the magnitude of the problem and the urgent need for intervention. Without access to food aid, vulnerable populations are left in a state of extreme desperation, facing immense challenges in their daily lives. The consequences of this hunger crisis extend beyond mere food scarcity, but puts hundreds of thousands of people at risk of resorting to extreme measures for survival. This includes the alarming potential for individuals to join armed groups, engage in early marriages, or even resort to survival sex. Joining us in this segment to explore these challenges in detail and seek to understand the contributing factors, their scope both from a regional and global perspective, and the immediate impact it has on the lives of millions of people, most especially in West Africa, is Azubike Nwokoye. He is the Food and Agriculture Program Manager, Action Aid Nigeria. He joins us from Abuja in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on One Slot.
Thank you.
It's quite an alarming incident we're seeing from the statistics of the World Food Programme. So what exactly are the primary factors that have contributed to the alarming rise in food insecurity in West Africa?
Okay, West Africa has been faced with a lot of conflicts, insurgency, banditry, and climate change crisis. But within all this, the governments of West Africa have not really invested in terms of real time in agriculture in critical areas. Our irrigation level is still very low. Our post-harvest losses is quite high, and access to extension services is low. Processing facilities are not available. Storage facilities are not that available also. Poor road networks, in fact, general infrastructure debt. And if you take only the post-harvest losses across West African countries, then you can see that what is being said is not part of place. And also, between some time now, trends in agricultural productivity and production for key staples show that major producers in terms of the countries in West Africa are having low yield for beans, cassava, maize, millet, rice, sorghum, yam, milk, and fisheries. And this has serious implications for West Africa's food and nutrition security because of also low investment, inconsistent policy, and this is also worsening the inequality situation in West Africa.
All right. I want to talk about the issue of insecurity. You highlighted so many challenges, infrastructure. You talk about how insecurity has also affected this agricultural sector. So can you elaborate on the specific ways in which persistent insecurity has impacted food systems and access to nutritious meals in the region? Because sometimes you go to the market, and especially if you look at Nigeria, we talk about Boko Haram, or you look at the farmers' headers clashes. So how exactly is it affecting agricultural production?
Okay, so what has persisted over time is, you know, farmers are killed in their farms, they are kidnapped, they are asked to pay ransom. You know, many states in Nigeria, where in some local government states like Niger State, Zamfara, where the bandits have taken over those states, and farmers have to pay a certain amount to access their farms also. So when you add that to the consistent farmer headers clashes
Mm.
and the recent floods that took place before the end of 2022, and we're already seeing rising waters already within this rainy season. So that complicates a whole lot of issues. Security, first and foremost, needs to be tackled in terms of so that farmers could have access to their farms, because many of the communities, the farmlands are around their forests, and most times they are at risk. So
Mm.
this is how insecurity has. So at times, maybe there might be relative security when they had planted, but attending to the farms and even going to harvest becomes a problem from time to time. You could even hear some saying that they have abandoned their farms because of insecurity.
Now, you're staying in Abuja, Nigeria. Let's take that as a prospect. How exactly has the government been able to curb the issue of insecurity? We have a new administration, but if you look at the year 2023, we're in the second half, how well or how far exactly has the government dealt with insecurity to make sure that these issues do not affect the agricultural production?
Okay, insecurity is multifaceted, and I cannot actually say this is how far the government has tackled it. It will be from the farmers and the communities. Insecurity is still somewhat high
Mm.
in terms of information we have generally, But moving away from insecurity, because for this conversation, I would like us not to really dwell much on insecurity, because the places that are also secure are not getting the adequate government support. Our investment in agriculture is quite low across all the West African countries, including Nigeria. For instance, Nigeria alone suffers about 3.5 trillion naira in
Mm.
post-harvest losses. And if you share that amount equally across 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, that is about 94.5 billion naira per state and the FCT. And no state has ever given up to that amount to the agriculture budget each year. So if you leave Africa, West Africa and Nigeria, and you move across African countries as a whole, the post-harvest losses is between 30 to 50%. That's quite high. So imagine if African countries could actually focus on tackling post-harvest losses through investment in processing facilities and storage facilities. That will save us a lot of money also.
Mm.
So apart from the level of investment, while the level of investment is low, the releases are also quite small most times in terms of the total amount released for agriculture across board. So those are some of the issues. Extension services is also low. So those are some of the issues. So if apart from insecurity,
Mm.
if all these things, all these other investments, those key areas are properly invested into, those areas that have relative security will be able to produce, and we won't be in crisis. Access to credit is quite low. as our last time in Nigeria, farmers have access to about just 25%, 23% of credit level in terms of official credit channel and government credit channel for smallholder women farmers. So it is quite, so those are some of the challenges. And also our irrigation level is quite low. So what government needs to do is to ramp up investments in these key areas.
Definitely, I agree with you, Azubike. I mean, it's not just insecurity, but we're taking the issues one step at a time, because you mentioned a whole lot of issues. And you would also say that even if there's lack of investment, if there's proper funding and yet the places are not secured, that also brings a bigger problem. So let's come to the issue of climate change, which you also mentioned earlier. And it seems that it's playing a big role in food insecurity. You mentioned the fact that there have been floods in certain areas. So tell us more exactly how it's increasing the food insecurity we're witnessing in West Africa.
Okay, as at last flood in Nigeria, for example, farms were actually washed away. So when the farms are washed away, it means that livelihoods are lost. So it means that farmers were also further impoverished. Apart from being further impoverished, it means that the food that should have come to the market was further reduced. So more investment need to be put into areas of agroecology so that we can reduce the climate crisis. And also government needs to put a lot of measures. The rivers need to be dredged, more dams needs to be built, and the existing dams needs to be desilted so that they can function in their capacity. So it is proper investment, targeted investment, and strategic investment that government needs to do. So the climate crisis is there. We have the warnings. We see what is happening, and it's as if at times government just waits for another year to start doing interventions when it is late, and this leads to a whole loss of lives and livelihood, thereby impacting negatively on our food security.
Would you say that the government is just basically political, lack of political will? Because you talked about investment in the agricultural sector. It's very important, and we know that. So what exactly are the challenges while we've not had enough investment to improve the agricultural sector in West Africa or to be more focused in Nigeria?
Okay, so when you talk about political will, it is not about making political statements and commitments. It has to be backed up with the financial muscle. Many of the West African countries are not meeting the 10% Maputo Declaration, which based on the agreement, African countries are supposed to put in at least 10% of their annual budget into the agriculture sector to achieve the 6% targeted growth in terms of agriculture GDP. Nigeria is achieving only about 2.something 3% GDP growth, and that is with quite abysmal investment. So the investment across board is low also, and it is also showing that many of the African countries, West African countries, need to increase their public expenditure in agriculture. Their public expenditure in agriculture is low, and it is not just investing in agriculture, but what are the key areas? What are the low-hanging fruits? And those low-hanging fruits are investing in community-level processing and storage facilities, investing in access to.
Azubike, can you hear me? All right, we'll still try to get Azubike. He's still. All right, go on, please.
Hello?
Yes, go on, please.
Okay. Investing in areas of making sure that farmers get extension services. Access to farm demonstration plots is quite low across West Africa. within extension services. Access to also farmers' field school is also quite low. And also, when you look at access to transportation and market access, it is quite low. So those are the key areas the government needs to invest in. Irrigation is low. The government needs to do a lot of investment. Our agriculture is not supposed to be rain-fed anymore. It's supposed to be all year round, and also investment on agroecology. Agroecology is the sustainable nature-based solution to producing food sustainably. So these are the areas the government needs to invest in.
Have there been any efforts in modern agricultural education? I mean, we're looking at technological advancement in the agricultural sector. Look at the rural farmers example. Has there been enough education on them, on recent methods and modern methods on farming?
So a lot is going on, but what we are saying is that a lot needs to be done. So what is going on is very small. That's why I harped on the need for massive investment in some certain key areas, which are also mentioned extension services. So in terms of extension services, I said that access to farm demonstration plus and farmers field school, both are very low. Low in the sense that these are areas where farmers learn best agronomic practices that increase yield. And it is also a platform for technology transfer where farmers easily adapt and use new improved varieties and so on. So it is actually in terms of access and supporting farmers. So let me give a simple illustration. So from year to year, when there are crises, maybe after the flood, then the government will say we support dry season farming. Now, if you give farmers early maturing seeds and early maturing livestock, and you don't provide the adequate extension services in terms of how they manage that properly or how they do good agronomic practices to ensure that they get the right targeted yield, it means that the investment in dry season has also been wasted, because it means that farmers will not have the knowledge to do proper application or care for the livestock properly based on best practices to have improved yield.
I will agree with you that there's a whole lot that needs to be done concerning all of this, but let's also look at the ripple effect. That's the high food prices, stable food, for example, rice, wheat, flours. We're seeing a very high increase. So how exactly has it affected the market generally?
Okay, so like I mentioned before, trends in agriculture production and productivity for key staples in West Africa is currently showing that major producers are having low yields. And those low yields are for countries producing a lot of beans, cassava, millet, rice, sorghum, yam milk, and fisheries, And this is also, what usually happens is that the lower the production, the low turnout you are bringing to the market. So the scarcity and prices will actually go up. So that is what is happening. There is low productivity. Productivity is dwindling, because of lack of the needed investment in the agriculture sector. And our governments need to do something quickly about that.
Now, let's go back to that report finally on the World Food Programme. It says that in the next 10 years, or in the past 10 years, it's been the worst hunger crisis that West Africa has witnessed. And in West Africa, we have lots of countries. So what sort of regional integration or cooperation is needed to deal with the issue of hunger crisis and food insecurity witnessed in the region?
Okay, honestly, to tell you from what I know and in some regional engagements and meetings I've been part of, the ECOWAS Commission is trying their best. So it is not even just about the regional. The national governments, the governments need to show strong commitment to food and nutrition security in terms of matching the sector with the needed funding. That is the truth. ECOWAS has put in so many mechanisms for mutual accountability, for research, for programming, supporting countries as much as they can. But the truth is this: the governments in West Africa and across Africa, they need to put the right investments in the agriculture sector in these key areas that I've mentioned. You know, access to finance and credit is a big problem. Access to quality input is a big problem. They need to invest in it. Appropriate labor saving technologies is a big issue. They need to invest in it. Reducing post-harvest losses via processing and storage facilities and market access. They need to invest in it. Research and development needs a lot of investment also. You know, extension services needs a lot of investment. And there should be specific and massive targeted programs to support smallholder women farmers working in the agriculture sector and young people in the agriculture sector for us to actually make sure that we are not faced with food and nutrition insecurity in West Africa.
Thank you so much, Azubike. A lot of things that need to be done. And for a country or for a continent that is rich in grain sources, I mean, we see lots of land, see a lot of potentials for agriculture. We need more investment. We need security in the agriculture or food sector to make sure that we are able to eradicate food insecurity and the hunger crisis witnessed in West Africa. Thank you so much for sharing so much light on the discussion today.
Thank you.